Hey guys, so today's a little bit different. I wanted to tell you, if you've been following me, you know that I was in the country of Antigua and Barbuda over the last couple of days. My birthday was April 5th with my daughters, but I wanted to mention that you really need to be careful when you're traveling, especially when you're traveling with minors or with, family members, just when you're traveling, especially traveling alone. So I stayed at St. James Club in Antiqua. It's a resort, all inclusive. And I checked in last week. Everything was paid in full, everything. As I was on the property the last couple of days, with my children, it was pretty a fair experience so far. The first couple of days, I saw that they had a excursion representative, and her name was Naomi, and she works there right on the property. Okay. Now, normally for me, when I try to do any type of excursions or any other things, I do it beforehand, but I just say I've never done it before through the actual resort. I usually have stuff already pre-planned and pre-set. But it was a stingray. I had saw it online prior to coming to St. James Club in Antigua. But I went ahead and I went in there because I didn't have anything booked thus far. So I thought it would be something my daughters could enjoy. It was a stingray and a tortoise excursion where they would be able to kind of like swim with the stingrays and then also see the tortoise. So I thought that would be nice. So I just wanted to get more information about it. So I think after breakfast, I came around to her and I said, hey, I was wondering, what did you guys have available? I was pretty much thinking I was interested in the stingray thing. I think I've seen it online. She said, oh, yes, we do have that. She explained it, but I'm going to say she didn't explain it well. She just said it's this much, and then we put some type of deposit, and I'm like, okay. I've been in the sun all day with my kids. I'm like, nothing's written down. I'm a person that needs to have everything kind of written out. So she told me when we get there, we'll pay, and anything else, I guess, will be left over that we pay later. That's what my understanding was. But the amount that she told me, I'm assuming that it was transportation was included. Now, I've traveled all over the Caribbean and even, to other places. And when I usually do my excursions, like when I went to St. Lucia, I did like a mud bath, and the food, lunch, and travel was included. I just assumed, and I'm just saying that I assumed that it was included. I'm just thinking to myself like, okay, so it's included. Nothing in my mind told me that it was not included. I'm just thinking like, okay, it's included. She didn't say transportation was additional. She really didn't explain anything. So going into it, I really had she wasn't explaining well. She just said, if you want to do just the stingray, you can. The tortoise would be $60, I think, additional US. So, not EC, but US. So EC is their money transfer term. So US. So I said, you know what? We've done the tortoise in Ohio Safari Zoo years ago with my mom and stuff like that. So I was like, I think we'll be okay. We'll just do the stingrays. And she really didn't explain, how like the packages was, the discount I would get by doing it together, anything like that. So the next day comes, I think it's the following couple of days, and we go down after breakfast to go to the excursion. And they're like, oh, okay, let's get your taxi. I said, okay. So we're waiting in the lobby, and then a guy pulls up. He's part of the property. His name is, I believe his name was Stead. I believe it is. His name is Stead. But either way, everything was looking smooth. He said, let me get some towels. We're waiting for them to get us some towels. I don't know what's taking the staff members. I was like, can y'all give us, grab us some towels. We need towels. That was taking long. So he was like, you know what, don't worry about it. I'll just grab some. So he grabbed us some. Cool. So we're in the cab. We're just kind of talking about life. And, it was only like a 20-minute drive. So it was a quick, brief talk. I said, okay, well, thank you. I'm thinking he's part of, the excursion, or, the resort, transportation. So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so I'm like, so we go to the Stingray, and we have a good time. It was cool, and I'm glad we did it. And once we were getting from the Stingray excursion, we were walking, and then the other people that had the Stingray and the tortoise book, they were going on to that, but the other ones that just did the Stingray, because the Stingray was like 30 minutes to an hour. They took us on like a boat, and then they took us in a shallow area of the ocean, and then we were able to actually like feed the stingrays and also like swim with them and, take pictures. So it was really cool because my kids had never experienced that. So I love that. So then when coming back, like I said, they had the pictures, as we could send them pictures, and I'll put the pictures in the video. But we did the pictures, and they said, why didn't you do the tortoise? The guy and the young lady was saying, as we paid for, I think it was like $30 US for pictures, but we paid for that. He said, because I paid $150 there for just the tortoise. Just the stingray, I'm sorry, $150 US, not EC, which is the money currency for Antiqua. So he said, you can see if you can still get a deal. The tortoise is really different. I said, my kids have done it back in the States. And they was like, well, it's different. They're like big brown tortoise. It's like, the Antigua kind. It's not like the States. I said, oh, okay. I asked my two kids, I said, do you guys want to do this? They're like, yeah, mommy. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, how much would it be? They're like, well, $65 per person. I'm like, well, okay. So they ended up telling us that they could do it for $25, which is the local rate for Antigua per person. So that would have been $75 additional dollars US. Okay. So they said it'll be at least an hour, for us to go over to the island for the tortoise, like a couple minutes from where their station was located at the Stingray City. So what I end up doing, I asked him, I said, so should I tell my driver that brought us here? Should I just run out and tell him that, or will you guys let him know? I'm like, that will be staying an additional hour for the tortoise event. And they said, we can tell him, or if you want to go tell him. So I was like, well, I'll just go tell him if he's out there still, because like I said, we had just came from the Stingray thing, so we hadn't been out yet. And so once I paid, I went out there. Actually had my kids just kind of wait over on the side. I ran up to his van, like a cab van that they drive in Antigua, and I said, hey, we decided to do the tortoise event since it wasn't really explained well by Naomi there at St. James Club, and I didn't get the discount. I think it was like $97 for both. It was really a better deal, but they were able to give me the local rate, so I decided to do it. My daughters were really interested. So he gave me this weird look. It was the weirdest look I've ever had. I've never had this experience ever, especially, being a tourist and being on what I would consider an excursion event. He looked at me like I was like a problem, or I did something wrong or something. I was like, is that going to be okay? Because, do I need to try to, are you going to have to come back? Or I'm thinking it's all included. That's how my previous experience have been when I travel out of the country, is that the travel is included. So I just assumed, things happen, and especially when it comes to excursions. So he was like, well, that'll be additional hour. I'm like, okay. And so with that being said, he just was kind of looking like really weird. I said, well, it's included, right, in the excursion, like you're being paid from, the excursion, from what was booked, that I booked. Because at this point I paid $225, and I think like something I had like still $40 like that I would pay additional or something like that. So I'm assuming that's all included. I'm on vacation with my kids. I'm like on unknown territories. I'm not thinking nothing different. I'm like, okay, that's how it was. I've always been. He's like, no, it's not included. I said, oh, okay. I did not know that. I said, I thought that the transportation would be included. So now I'm just looking puzzled. He looking at me, I'm looking at him. I said, she did not explain that. Naomi back at St. James Club Antigua at the resort we're staying, and she is the one who booked it. She's on the property. She did not explain that very well for me to be like a new tourist. It's not like I do this all the time in Antigua. So, you know, he's like, well, it's $75. And I'm thinking $75, like, you mean like $150? Like this, you know, both ways, you know, to pick me up and like plus whatever. And I'm thinking like, okay, at this point, this excursion is getting expensive. So I'm kind of confused. I'm like, and I'm not getting played. I feel like you know how you don't get all the information before us, or you feel like you kind of are, you know, misinformed. And money wasn't a, you know, an issue, but I just, you know, I like to know these things. And I feel like there's something important, especially if you're explaining a particular event, you could explain that to make sure that I understood that. So he ends up calling her. Okay, now mind you, the Turtles event is about to start, so we have to take the boat over to the island for the Turtles. And I'll show you a video of that event too. It was really nice. So he's like, she's calling. She's like, well, she should have read the fine black print. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like, I mean, you explained it. I sat down and asked you, you know, how does it work, you know, for this event? And you could have outlined it. I mean, I am a consumer, I understand, but at the same point, I mean, we weren't in a rush situation. This was on a Sunday at the resort. How come you couldn't explain this to me? To where I understood, like, you have to pay the transportation. So I'm like, listen, I said, this was definitely a misunderstanding. I feel misinformed. I said, we're about to book. I said, I don't know, you know, what's going on. You know, she said, well, what we can do, she said, we can put the balance, or we can put it right on the payment method. Like, that's the next option when I'm telling you right now, I'm not comfortable with the fact that I feel like I was not informed. So that's not the next step to me. It's just, oh, go ahead and throw it on my credit card. I want to understand why I feel like I was misinformed. I mean, I feel like I have that right. I mean, I'm not saying that's the final bottom line, but that's not the next step. So she's like, okay, well, she said, also, you may have a bad. Then so she goes from that. I said, well, no, I don't want to do that, because I really don't feel like I was informed about that the transportation was not included. So she says, well, you know, we can put it on the payment method. And I said, well, I don't, you know, want to do that or something. I said, she said, also, she started to go into, now checkout was like several days later. That was going to be coming up later. So she said, oh, also you'll have a balance. Like, she started going into my balance and all this crazy stuff. I'm like, girl, we talking about, I'm at an excursion with my kids. Okay. And you're over here explaining to me my, you know, my fees and stuff like that. Like, so now you want to see if like I can even afford, because I'm telling you that I feel misinformed, because there's not a lack, but I wanted to be informed. I think I have my right. So I said, well, you know what? I don't know what happened, but I don't understand this, you know, miscommunication or this misunderstanding, but they are about to board this small boat. And I don't want to miss that, because at this point I've just paid $75 US. So I was like, okay. And I just kind of put my hands up, and then I walked over to where my kids were at so we could board. It was just me and my two daughters. And then it was a guy and a girl, and so it was like really a small amount of people on this boat to go over to because it was like 5 minutes away. It was like on a little speedboat. So we get on that and we spend time over there, and it was really nice. It was well worth it, by the way. I mean, it was like Antiguan turtles. They were like really, I'll see if I can put a picture up here or a video for it. And then they had the baby one. So anyhow, after that we come back, and so I'm seeing that he's not here anymore. So I'm just sitting there. I did call another cab. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm at this point confused. I have never had anything like this happen, you know, that was just like so crazy. And I feel like so unprofessional. Like, you handling me in a way like I'm not even, you know, how you handling me? Because it's not to me in a professional way. He not there. He not having no understanding. Like, well, let's try to figure this out. He like, you know, he not even there. So I call a cab. We just sitting there at this point, and then all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, I see the authorities. And I'm like, well, maybe they just coming by because, I mean, I've never had no problems ever when I go out of the country. So, I don't know. So I'm just sitting there with my daughters waiting. And so as they're pulling up, I see the guy, his name is Let, the driver, and he's pulling up. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so they come over to me and they said, what seems to be going on? I said, nothing. And because in my mind, there's nothing. There was a miscommunication, but otherwise there was nothing that was, to me, a problem. A miscommunication with the resort director for the excursions. That was it. So while he's, walking up, he's saying, yeah, she owes me 35 EC. Okay, so I mean, it would have been $70 cash, US, or whatever payment method. But at the time, I thought he was talking about 150. But either way, there was still a miscommunication. It wasn't about the dollar amount. It was just a miscommunication. I was just like, I should have known. I feel like I was misinformed. And now I went and, got another thing where she didn't even really explain the package to me and what the benefits are, anything. It was just all done wrong. So after that, they're like, we're going back and forth. I said, well, I explained to Let that I was misinformed through the person there at my resort that and so I want to talk to them and see what happened because I felt like I was misinformed and I was not expecting, I thought it was all inclusive. Okay, the whole package for this particular excursion. So just the Stingray, them taking me to the Stingray and back. That's what I thought. So they're like, well, we're going back and forth, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And he's just like, just forget it. So he says, just forget it. And I'm kind of, I'm nervous. My kids are looking horrified. They looking like, oh my God, Mom, are you going to jail? I mean, imagine the nervousness. I'm in a whole nother country. So I'm just like, oh God, like I'm with my two small minor kids. It's not like they old enough to be like, okay, well, we can fend for ourselves. I'm nervous at this point. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, this is traumatic. Like I'm sitting here in Antigua, the country of Antigua, with my two small kids, and these it's like 3-man police officers that are like, what's going on? And saying that I could be detained. And, I was really scared. They're like, well, we could detain you. And I said, well, there was a misunderstanding. So he said, well, I guess even if it was a misunderstanding, saying they could still detain me. So he's like, well, what do you want to do? So we're going back and forth. I said, it's not about the money thing. That's not the thing. I was not informed. I feel like she should have explained it to me better. And so he goes to say, well, we'll just handle it. I'm just going to say, forget it. So he drove off. They drove off. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just sitting here like shaking. My kids looking like, oh my God, like my mom's going to be taken away. It was an experience I never want to experience, especially when you're going to supposed to be something enjoyable with your kids. This was something, their first time out of the country, other than like, I think they've been in Mexico, but like just to be able to go on to a bigger experience. This was something I was not expecting. Like we had such a good time that whole day. I just didn't expect that to be the next step. And I even looked at him. I said, you would call the police on somebody with their children, their small minor children. I talked to you that morning. We talked about, everything with the U.S. and all this stuff. Because at this time, I didn't know anything that this was not inclusive. So it was mortifying. It definitely was. So when my driver gets here, another driver gets here to take us back to the hotel. They take us back to the hotel where I met by the resort, St. James Club, where I met by Donna. Donna is saying, okay, what seems to be the problem? I said, just as I explained to Let and Naomi, who was very rude to me and wanted to go over my bill while explaining the fact that I was misinformed, over my whole hotel expenses, that all my expenses was paid, but it's fine. She wanted to go over like what it was going to be at the last day and like stuff that she didn't need to go over with me. at the time we're talking about something totally different. It was not a need for her to do. I'm educated enough, college educated, that was not necessary. You wanted to say, oh, well, you must don't have it. Instead of saying that, okay, she's not born. I bet you if I'd have been, because there's a lot of people that travel there from the United Kingdom, that would have never happened. And they probably would have just, I don't know what they would have done. I've heard things, but, it is still like a British type of territory. So it's a lot of people from the UK there. But either way, so she is like, well, we told them they definitely could not retain you for 35 EC. And she kind of laughed. She said, what they could. And she was like really hesitant on like, if, that would be the next thing to still detain me. And I'm like, well, there was a misinformation with Naomi. I kind of feel like, there's something that needs to be resolved there. She did not, tell me. And they said, well, it's on the voucher. I said, but it's in fine print. It was not like told to me, because if I had known, I could have made a better decision. I probably would have still done it, but I would have wanted to know. It was not about the financial factor. It was just the misinformation. That's how I felt. And so she's like, yeah. And so then she's like, well, we could leave that as a, misunderstanding. She was kind of like that. But she also decided that this was a good time to go over my balance, which if it's like fees or taxes, I think would have been like $100 and some. She wanted at this time, and I was not going to be checking out anytime soon. But that's what she wanted to do. I said, we'll deal with checkout time when it's checkout time. This was something that was very traumatic for me and my kids, and I don't understand why we were treated the way we were treated on our, trip. That was the next step for someone that was staying at your resort. That was very inappropriate for some guests that are staying at your resort. So they still at the time were still kind of like looking like they was thinking they could still detain me. So it still had me like had the nervous vibes. I was just like, oh my goodness, she's like kind of looking like, they could or they couldn't. And it was just like, oh my. So, the end result is a lot. I have a lot more to the story. But I want to have you guys sound off. Do you think like I should have just paid the 35 EC, or do you think like I had a right to, have some, opinion and feel, the way that I, or, kind of stand my ground and want to get some information of why I felt like I was not informed? Was that the right way to go? That I'm just had authorities when I'm here with my 2 small kids and I'm a guest at this property? We had been there at this point like 3 days. So sound off. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is this something that you think is kind of normal? You think they went too far? You think they handled it wrong? Let me know, guys. And I'll be back with some more information. Peace and love.